Okay, so our little vid today is a quick overview of writing an academic summary. So when we talk about academic summary, the first thing I want to do is make a distinction between the act of summarizing versus the genre of summary. So, as we've talked about briefly, genre is a funny little French word which means literally type or sort. And when we talk about genre in the context of our writing class, we are talking about types of writing that respond to particular rhetorical situations and thus develop or evolve a certain set of features that make them very recognizable. So when we talk about writing an academic summary, I am talking about writing the genre of summary. But in order to write the genre of summary, we need to engage in the act of summarizing. So let's talk a little bit about how to build this. First step is to start with your reading of the piece that you are going to be summarizing. Engaging critical reading strategies is key here. So annotation may be your go-to strategy. We did have to do that for our class. But there may be other strategies which help you understand the reading. Reading out loud is a great strategy. Working on summarizing paragraph by paragraph, creating a reverse outline. All of these strategies can help you answer the question, do you get it? If you don't get it, then it's time to grab some other resources. Talking to peers or your peer mentor, talking to your instructor, getting some clarification on the content of the reading is really key. So first, start with reading and make sure that you get what the reading is saying, because the act of summary includes answering this key question: what is the main point of this reading? In other words, what is the author's argument? What is the author trying to communicate? So if we think back to the rhetorical situation, this is the author's message or purpose that we usually place on that main point of the triangle. What is the author trying to say? And key to answering this question is, what is the rhetorical situation? Who is the author saying this to? How is the author presenting himself or herself, themselves, in this rhetorical situation? So we need to suss out these key points first. What is the main point of the reading? So for example, in Anne Lamott's chapter, Shitty First Drafts, she is making an argument, even though she doesn't have a quote-unquote thesis statement. What is her argument? Were you thinking that it was you should use multiple drafts, especially a shitty first draft? Ding, ding, ding. Then you are correct. Anne Lamott is making an argument for multiple drafts in a writing process, and within that is embedded several sub-points or sub-arguments, which sometimes we call key details or the key evidence. So evidence within a piece is what are the subpoints or smaller examples that are supporting that main point or that main argument. In other words, how is the author making his or her or their point? So for example, with Anne Lamott, she's giving us a lot of personal examples, anecdotes, but she's also pointing to writing processes of other writers. She does a deep dive into her own writing process by giving us a bit of narrative that centers around her writing a particular genre. So all of these things would be key evidence that supports the main point Lamott is making about the use of multiple drafts, especially a shitty first draft. And last but not least, some summaries will call for a bit of analysis. Now, I don't want everyone to kind of run with this because we're not trying to write our opinion about the significance of this writ large. This isn't the time to make a whole analysis paper. That's a different genre. But within a summary, I'm talking you might use a sentence, a couple of key parts of sentences. You might use a phrase or a clause that helps you situate the piece that you're summarizing in terms of its success, in terms of any logical fallacies that are present, or elements of the rhetorical situation that you might want to call out as you're writing about it. For example, going back to the Anne Lamott piece, you might say something like, in her book Bird by Bird, Anne Lamott has a chapter called Shitty First Drafts, in which she argues that her readers, aspiring writers themselves, should employ the same type of multiple drafting process that she herself uses. So you see, that was like one probably kind of long and clunky sentence, but it was full of some of these details. You might even add in her successful book, or you might say that Anne Lamott makes a hilarious argument that falls well on readers' ears or minds or whatever. I'm spitballing here a little bit, but only the slightest, tiniest bit of analysis should find its way into your summary for the purpose of contextualizing the main point and the key evidence that the author uses to support the point. Because when it comes to summary, the package that you deliver, the thing that you write down, is the gist of the piece, the main point, the key evidence, and perhaps elements of the rhetorical situation, who it's written to. This might affect whether or not it's successful or effective or not, but when you're creating the genre of summary, you're not being asked your opinion of the piece. I liked it because it was really funny. No, that's not summary. That's response. You're not trying to say, oh, she's a brilliant writer. That's not your point. That's a different analysis. In a summary, you're trying to say, what was her argument and how did she make it? And maybe a little bit like, why did she make it? Is this making sense so far? So when we come back to this idea of the act of summarizing versus the genre of summary, it's key to understand that some of these cognitive processes, reading, understanding the rhetorical situation, thinking through what the main point and associated evidence is, all of that happens to help you build this piece called a summary, which is a genre of writing in which you're not giving your opinion on the piece, you're not giving your opinion on the author, you're not giving your response to the argument, you're merely stating what the argument is and giving some contextual information that helps readers understand how that argument gets built and maybe a little bit of why. Okay, happy building, everyone.